Good morning, all of you. Hope all of you are safe and you are studying, attending all the lectures. So it has been long time. We have discussed in previous class the antenatal fetal monitoring. So now in this class, we are going to discuss intrapartum fetal monitoring or intrapartum fetal surveillance. So what is intrapartum? So antenatal means before the patient goes into the labor. Intrapartum, the patient has already started with the labor pains. Then we need to see how the baby is behaving when the contraction has started. So when we are giving the force or when there is a stress is there, how the baby is behaving, we can localize it or we can diagnose it before so that we can prevent any injury or any long-term complications. So the fetal heart rate monitoring has been in the clinical use for 3 decades and it continues to be the predominant method for intra-atom fetal monitoring. So what we record is the fetal heart rate. So what is the basis for this intrapartum fetal monitoring? So we all know that what happens during when the contraction starts, when the uterus is a muscular organ. So there is a crisscrossing of muscular fibers are there, and in between that muscle fibers, the blood vessels run. So when there is a contraction, this blood vessels gets contracted, and there is a decrease in the blood supply to the fetus. So when there is a decrease in the placental circulation will be affected. But for normal fetus, it doesn't have any effect. But when the baby is having the complications like intrauterine growth retardation or any other maternal and fetal complications, that means that baby is not a healthy baby. It's a compromised baby. So this compromised baby, how it reacts will be seen on this fetal monitoring. So it intended to assess the fetal oxygenation during labor and subsequent fetal physiological response to the O2 transfer when it is interrupted. The fact that the changes in fetal heart rate due to hypoxia. So what is this one? Our goal is to timely identification and rescue the fetus at risk of neonatal and long-term morbidity from intrapartum hypoxic insult. So why do you want to say it before? So the basis of this, that there are changes in fetal heart rate which happens before the actual insult to the brain. So the fact that the changes in fetal heart rate due to hypoxia precedes brain injury constitute the rationale for fetal heart rate monitoring. And when we diagnose it early, we can take the preventive measures and the treatment part of this. So the timely response to abnormal fetal heart rate change effectively, if is very effective in preventing the birth injuries or the brain injuries. So uterine contractions during labor normally decreases, as I told you, the uteroplacental blood flow, and which in turn results in decrease in the oxygen delivery to the fetus. And in healthy fetus, they will tolerate this. There is, even if there is a reduction in the blood flow, and it will not have any adverse effect. But the distribution, it depends on what happens from the maternal lungs to get delivered to the placenta, and then from placenta to the fetal circulation, and from fetal cardiovascular activity it will go to the other tissues. So this is the chain which happens, and when there is a problem with this, will reduce in this treat reduce the availability. If there is any change in this anywhere in this, things can happen affect the fetal this one. So main goal for, already I told you, the main goal is timely identification. So timely identification of fetuses that are being inadequately oxygenated. There is no proper oxygen supply to the fetus to enable the and to rescue, so that the appropriate action can be taken and to prevent the injury. And the second thing is here, when we are monitoring, that we are reassuring to ourselves also and to the laboring woman also that everything is fine. So this will reduce the stress. So already the woman in labor will have a stress a lot, So when the fetal heart rate is normal, when we are monitoring, when we are, so we are also reassuring her that everything is okay. So you need not worry. So, and so that unnecessary, we will not take the hasty decisions like going for cesarean section. So we can reduce the rates of cesarean section. So intrapartum fetal surveillance, how we do. So intrapartum fetal monitoring, we can go for FHR monitoring, fetal heart rate monitoring, uh, either by intermittent auscultation or electronic fetal monitoring. Uh, all of you must have seen in the labor ward that we have a machine called as a CTG machine where we continuous cardiotocography. So continuous fetal monitoring, either it can be treated or it can be continuously we can do. So it is a electronic fetal monitor that there at the same, this one we monitor the uterine contractions also, and we monitor the fetal heart rate also. The second thing is fetal scalp blood pH, fetal pulse oximeter. These are the various methods by which means we can monitor the how is the fetus reacting inside the uterus with the stress of the labor. Fetal pulse oximetry, fetal scalp lactate testing, and this is called as STAN. STAN is the method where the fetal echocardiography and is combined with CTG, and there are the changes in ST waveform analysis will be done. So fetal heart rate monitoring. So fetal heart rate monitoring we can do by intermittent auscultation and by cardiotocography. So fetal heart rate monitoring, intermittent auscultation, usually in low risk cases, when everything is normal, like that when we call it as a normal. So for there is no maternal and fetal complications, we can go for intermittent fetal heart rate monitoring. So all of you have seen that when in different stages of labor, we can auscultate the fetal. In OPD, we auscultate with Pinat's fetoscope or stethoscope, or we can go for Doppler, handheld Doppler ultrasound probe, which already all of you have seen this. So more, what the advantage with handheld Doppler ultrasound probe is when we are listening to the laboring woman is also at the same time listening to the heart rate, and it is also satisfactory for her that everything is normal. So better to have a handheld ultrasound probe, and so intermittent auscultation. So first we'll go for intermittent auscultation, then this fetal cardiotocographic machine or external fetal heart rate monitoring. So intermittent auscultation, it is the technique used to listen to the fetal heart sound for a short period of time. We cannot go on keeping putting the stethoscope on maternal abdomen and go on listening to the, so it will be very stressful to the mother and also to the physician which is taking. So it is only for the short period of time without display. There is no display when we are hearing the fetal heart rate on a stethoscope or fetal heart Doppler. That is, tracings will not be there. On Doppler, we can just see what is the count of the so it should be recommended for routine intrapartum fetal monitoring. Routinely, we don't go for continuous fetal heart rate monitoring. Routinely, we use Doppler only for monitor the patient in labor. So when there, and this can be one method where we don't have this facility of CTG. We don't have this machine here also. We can be, so both in the intermittent auscultation and monitoring by CTG. Those have the similar result. There is no things different in both the things if you are done judiciously. So technique, what we should do before we are going for intermittent auscultation. The first thing is always, I always tell you, whenever you are touching the any patient for examination, before that you should always explain what you are going to do. You should always take her consent, and you should be very gentle when you are saying the fetal heart rate. You should not press on the maternal abdomen so that she will have the pain. Already the patient is in pain, so you should not increase their pain. And then we should do the examination, obstetrical examination. We should find out the position of the fetus, how it is, what is the presentation, and then we should localize where we can hear the heart sounds clearly. And by stethoscope or by Doppler, we have to listen to them. So when the patient is in first stage of labor. So in latent stage, there are no guidelines when should we auscultate. But once the patient goes into active stage of the labor, so the fetal heart rate should be monitored every 30 minutes. And always it is better if you monitor the fetal heart rate after each uterine contraction. So that after each uterine contraction, we can see how the baby is behaving after the stress. So in first stage of labor, in active stage every 30 minutes, and in second stage every 15 minutes if the patient is of low risk. We are going to see what are the high risk factors where we should go for more judicious management, and if it is a high risk case, there we should go for every 15 minutes in active stage and every 5 minutes in latent second stage of labor. So what are the things we should look for? So when we are auscultating, at the same time we should see for the uh, or uterine contractions also. We should monitor, one hand should be on the maternal pulse, so that we are not at the same time we are monitoring the maternal pulse and fetal heart rate. We should sometimes we can see the who sound, but typical auscultation of fetal heart rate, the sound is like the galloping sound, like steps of the horse. So it should be like the ticking of the watch or the like rolls. So it should, we should differentiate between these two. The hoping, the passing of the blood through the vessels, large vessel whooping sound is there. So we can, when we are monitoring the pulse at the same time, we can differentiate between the two. So if there is, we have a, because it is a short period of time, if we are having any more doubt in that, we should prolong a little bit. So at least in 10 minutes, we always know that there is a good contractions is 3 contractions, each lasting for 45 and in 10 minutes. So like that, after each contraction, we should monitor the fetal heart rate. So what are the recommended frequency? Already I told you the nice guidelines. They are there. So FHS can stage every 5 minutes. So what are the abnormal findings? So normal heart rate, you all of you know that is 110 to 1. So normally 120 to 160 we take it as normal. Anything less than that is abnormal. So 110 to 120 we need not, sometimes it can happen with the change of fetal position, but if it is less than 110 and more than 160, then with less than 110 in bradycardia, more than 160 is tachycardia. So baseline, what are the abnormal findings? If baseline heart rate is less than 110 and more than 160. If there are decelerations, so when if on auscultation, when after contraction, when we are hearing, when if the heart rate is decreasing, that means if there are decelerations after the contractions, that is also an abnormal thing. And if the contractions are more than, we in 10 minutes, if you are finding more than 5 contractions and there is no relaxation period in between 2 contractions, the relaxation period is less than 1 minute. So why this relaxation period is required? So that the blood supply gets normalized. So if there are tonic contractions are there, the uterus is not relaxing, that means it's abnormal. So that we'll see how we'll manage this abnormal stresses. So it will be same for intermittent and continuous. So what are the technical considerations? So the basis for fetal heart rate monitoring is beat to beat recording. And the for practical purposes, this is if we can see beat to beat variability when we see a graph. So when fetal echocardiograms are recorded with collector, ideally the internal fetal monitoring, external and internal. When the electrodes are outside over the maternal abdomen, it is external fetal heart rate monitoring. When the electrodes are directly placed on the scalp of the fetus, then that is internal heart rate monitoring. So the paper speed with which we are monitoring is also important. There is 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, and 3 centimeter per minute. 1 centimeter per minute is a good speed of the paper, so that we can have a good records for clinical purpose, and so that we can save the cost and amount of the paper also. And the crowding together of the recording, making the baseline variability. If we make it fast, there will be crowding together. So it will be very difficult to see the baseline variability. So, but when we'll use 3 centimeter per minute, this one. So it is useful when the record is difficult to interpret with a slow speed, that is during second stage of labor. Usually we increase the speed to 3 centimeter per minute, but here the wastage of paper is more. So internal fetal monitoring, as I already told you, the spiral electrode is attached to the fetal scalp with the connection to the fetal monitor. And but when can we do this internal fetal monitoring? For that, the membrane should be ruptured. The cervix should be at least 3 to 4 centimeter, at least 3 centimeter dilated partially before the electrode can be placed on the fetal scalp like this. It is directly placed to the fetal scalp, the prominent point of the fetal scalp. This is internal fetal monitoring, but we don't prefer going for internal fetal monitoring. We go for external fetal monitoring. So I already discussed regarding this. Continuous fetal monitoring, intermittent auscultation with Doppler and continuous fetal monitoring. So continuous we don't use when the case is of low risk, and it is only the high risk cases. I already told you, so in active stage of labor, every 15 minutes you have to see, and in second stage of labor, every 5 minutes. So what is fecal as intermittent auscultation and external fetal monitoring? So acceptable methods in low risk and high risk pregnancies, intermittent auscultation is acceptable in both. But in high risk cases, I already said before, during, and especially after the contraction. That is more important, is after the uterine contraction. For 1 minute, you have to auscultate, complete 1 minute, you have to auscultate. Then continuous fetal monitoring, we can use in low risk pregnancies, high risk pregnancies, but mainly it is for high risk pregnancies. So don't want this. So tracing you can go for with every 15 minutes. Then, so what are the indications for continuous external fetal monitoring, where we are continuously putting the CTG on? So antepartum risk factors, I already told you, if there are any changes in Doppler velocimetry, suspected IUGR, antepartum hemorrhage, very common preeclampsia, hypertension of pregnancy, diabetes, any medical disorders of pregnancy. Then multiple pregnancy, oligohydramnios, polyhydramnios, previous cesarean section, when we are allowing the patient to go for VBAC, vaginal delivery after cesarean section. There is judicious monitoring is very important, because there is a chances of scar rupture, scar dehiscence. So here in these cases, we go for continuous fetal monitoring. Then RHIS immunization. This is also one important thing. Any maternal conditions, anemia, cardiac disease, I already told you, medical disorders. So during labor, what are the risk factors during labor where we want a continuous monitoring? So when there is, nowadays we are not allowing the patient to have a prolonged rupture of membranes, but if she has, before coming to the hospital, if there is prolonged rupture of membranes more than 24 hours, there is a meconium staining or blood staining of the liquor. On auscultation, intermittent auscultation, if we find that the heart rate is less than 110, or if it is between 160 to 180, more than 180, patient is having, the mother is having fever more than 38 degree, there is infection like chorioamnionitis, bleeding in labor, and the first stage of labor, the active stage has been prolonged, and there is a prolonged second stage. So any prolongation in first stage or second stage, we want to have a continuous monitoring. The most important thing here, where we want to have a continuous monitoring, is when we are giving any oxytocic drugs, either for induction of labor or for acceleration of labor. So already in induction we have discussed this. So induction or augmentation of labor. Why? Because this oxytocic drugs can cause hypercontractility of the uterus, and if there is more than 5 contractions, there is definitely fetal jeopardy will be there. So this, where we are going for induction or augmentation, you must have seen in the ward that always we tell the juniors to have a CTG in the morning 6 a.m. before going for doing induction, because already we prefer to have inductions early in the morning. So before putting any oxytocic drugs, we want to have a see how it is, the fetal heart rate tracing is there. That is called as an admission test. So for 20 minutes we put the Doppler probe and we monitor how the tracing is coming. So what is the baseline heart rate, whether there are accelerations are there, whether there are decelerations are there, so that we can compare after putting the oxygen drugs. The other thing is when we are giving the penless labor, epidural analgesia. So immediately after, before each and every patient should have an admission test. So for 20 minutes, if you have a CTG machine, it is always better to have a run for 20 minutes and see the baseline stressings. And immediately after giving that. So what are the benefits of this continuous fetal monitoring with tracings and intermittent auscultation? So usually this reduces the neonatal seizure. The chances of neonatal seizures are reduced, but there are not much benefit in cases like perinatal mortality and the chances of cerebral palsy. So both are equally good. So if we are doing judiciously, if you are monitoring well, so intermittent auscultation is also as good as the external fetal monitoring. So usually when we are, this is also one important thing. So what are the drawbacks of this continuous external fetal monitoring? Usually this will increase our stress. We are always stressed. We are going to see the dressing, it is coming like this, it is like, and unnecessary, this is unnecessary interventions, panicky things, and increased rate of instrumental delivery or cesarean sections when we are going for this monitoring. And there is a more of inter-observer or intra-observer variability. Maybe I feel that this CTG is normal. Maybe the other person feel that no, it is not normal. So there is an increase in surgical interventions when we are going for fetal monitoring. So electronic fetal monitoring, what are the components of this fetal monitoring? So it is, what is the baseline heart rate, whether there is a variability, whether there is accelerations means increase in the heart rate, whether there are decelerations means decrease in the heart rate. So what things we will see? So baseline. So baseline means what is the fetal heart rate, baseline fetal heart rate. So the mean fetal heart rate, it is rounded to, if there is only 5 beats per minute during a 10-minute segment. So excluding the periodic or episodic changes, periods of FHS variability, segments of baseline that differ for more than 25. So only 5 beats per minute differentiation, we take it as a baseline. So at least 2 minutes, minimum 2 minutes in 10 minutes we should see. So what is the normal? 110 to 160. Tachycardia more than if it is 160, more than 160 beats per minute. Bradycardia if it is less than 110 beats per minute. So then second thing is, so that baseline. So we should observe the fetal heart rate for at least period of 2 minutes when there are not much changes in the fetal heart rate. So that it can, it's a only 5 beats per minute differentiation should be there. Then baseline variability. So we know that when we are auscultating with the Doppler or stethoscope, we don't see that there is a same heart rate at the same time. It goes on changing. So the fluctuation in the baseline fetal heart rate that are irregular in amplitude and frequency. They're very irregular. So both amplitude and frequency is irregular. So it is usually we visualize as peak and trough. Like this. The tracing shows a variability. There is a peak. There is a peak, it increases, then it decreases. This is a trough. So this is the variability. This is one square, it is 5 beats per minute. So this is peak and this is a trough. So this is variable. Everywhere it is goes on. So when the baseline variability is absent, so when it is like a flat line, always we say that we don't want a flat line, we don't want a stress. You must have seen in the movies, they said if it is a flat line, that it has loss. Like that, we never want a flat line. We want always the variability. So the minimal, the variability is 0 to 5 beats per minute. Moderate is from 6 to 25, it is a moderate. And a mark variability, when it is more than 25, it just go on increasing. So there is short-term or long-term variability. For short period of time, there are changes, small changes. They are usually physiological. Long-term is important. If there are long-term changes in variability, because that is very important. So we take it as a long-term changes is important. So this is silent. See this graph. Can you see this? This is a baseline fetal heart rate. There is only very small 5 bits changes. So it is a silent 0 to 5. The variability is 0 to 5. Here you can see the variability. It is going up 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. So it is around 11 to 25. So each square is 5. So at least till 5. So 11 to 5 is normal. Here it is a reduced 0 to 5, 6 to 10 it is little reduced. Only 2 blocks it is increasing. So it is reduced. But normal 11 to 25 it is normal variability. Here we can see it is a normal. It is going up 2, 3 boxes is going. Again it is going. Again going up, coming up. So at least 11, 2 blocks it should cross. So 11 to 25 beats per minute is normal. And here you can see this is a sleeping pattern. There are no variabilities. Same like a sawtooth. And saltatory, it is continuous. It is nothing. They here no this one. It is highest more than 25 and abnormal. So this is abnormal. Saltatory is also abnormal. So what are the factors affecting variability? So normal variability, it should be there. Normally 98% there should be variable fetal heart rate. It should not same. So more than 11 to 25 beats of variability should be there. And when there is a variability, that means the 90%, 98%, almost 98 to 98%, there is no fetal compromise, there is no acidosis. So when there is a decreased variability, so what are the cases where there is a decreased variability? We are very worried when there is a decreased variability. And in decreased variability, there can be fetal metabolic acidosis, CNS depressant drugs are going on, sleep cycle, baby is sleeping. So that's what we always tell that you, sorry, which we more in that we, when we find that there is less of variability, I always, I will tell you the what should we do. Then congenital anomalies of the fetus, prematurity, there is tachycardia, pre-existing neurological abnormality. When there is increased variability, saltatory sawtooth, it is acute, mainly it is seen in cord compression and it is second stage of the labor. There is increased variability. There is acute hypoxia, acute insult is there, and cord compression is there. So this is regarding the variability. We'll see what we should do. If there are variability is less, then what we do is see for whether the mother is hypoglycemic. We ask her to take something. We change the position, ask her to lie on one side. Then we see whether she is having hypovolemia. There is a hypotension. We give the fluids. So we give oxygen by mask or this one. And after doing this, after 10 minutes left lateral, again we will repeat it. So what is acceleration? So it is usually it is abrupt increase in fetal heart rate is called as an acceleration. In less than 32 weeks if it is, so more than 10 beats per minute above the baseline for more than 10 seconds. There should be acceleration, that is normal. If the fetus is more than 32 weeks, there should be at least acceleration of more than 15 beats per minute. So 11 to 15, 25, we said that. So at least more than 15 beats per minute from the baseline, which lasts for more than 15 seconds. That is called as a normal. What is prolonged acceleration? If it is last more than 2 minutes, but it is less than in 10 minutes. So it is prolonged acceleration. And if acceleration last more, if it is a continuous, the graph is going up like that and it is not coming to the baseline, that means there is a baseline change is there. Then deceleration. Deceleration means there is a decrease in the heart rate. So in this deceleration, we have early decelerations, late deceleration, variable deceleration, prolonged deceleration. So what is early deceleration? Early deceleration means symmetrical. There is a gradual decrease and then again it will come to the normal. So early decelerations is a symmetrical gradual decrease and the return of FHR associated with uterine contractions. So when there is uterine contraction start, as the uterine contraction start, the fetal heart rate go on decreasing. So when there is a peak of uterine contraction, there is a trough of down. The fetal heart rate is less. Again, when the contraction decreases, the heart rate comes to normal. So the nadir of deceleration occurs at the same time of the peak of uterine contraction. In most cases, the onset, the nadir and recovery of deceleration, it coincides with the beginning, peak and ending of uterine contraction respectively. So it correlates. The contraction and fetal heart rate, it correlates. So for that, we always, there is, when we do it, we put a probe, one on the maternal abdomen, where at the fundus, because we all of us know that the uterine contractions start from the fundus. So on the fundus, we keep a toco for maternal monitoring, and where we can hear the fetal heart rate loudly, there we put the fetal probe. So these two probes are tied to the maternal abdomen. So here we can see that the starting of the uterine contraction, can you see this? The uterine contraction start, there is a decrease in the fetal heart rate. It is a peak of uterine contraction, there is a nadir of the heart rate. And when the contraction decreases, the fetal heart rate starts increasing. So this, the onset, the nadir and recovery, it correlates with the onset, the peak and recovery of the contraction. So this is called as a early deceleration. Sorry. So this is usually, we don't worry if there are early decelerations. It may be normal, but sometimes it may be associated with uteroplacental insufficiency. And usually the causes are maternal hypotension. I already told you, hypotension, hypovolemia, hypoglycemia. In cases of post-maturity, diabetes, if it is a repeated, this decelerations are coming, then we should be worried. Single or double deceleration, not much. So early deceleration, usually it is by the, when the patient is, it is in the, early decelerations are usually when there is a head compression, and this is normal. By uterine cervix, there is deceleration is there, and when the cervix gets dilated, there is no compression, it will come up. So we are not worried about the early deceleration. What we worried about are the late decelerations. So late decelerations are, there is a symmetrical gradual, there is a gradual decrease in the fetal heart rate, and this is also gradual with the return of fetal heart rate associated with uterine contractions. So it is delayed in timing. So it doesn't correlate with the onset, peak and recovery of the uterine contraction. So it is usually after the returning of uterine contraction, there is a decrease in the heart rate. So the deceleration is delayed in timing, with the nadir of deceleration occurring after the peak of uterine contraction. And in most cases, it is onset, nadir and recovery of deceleration is after the beginning of, so beginning, peak and ending of uterine contraction respectively. So it doesn't correlate. And this is, see here, the onset of the decreasing heart rate, it is the peak of the uterine contraction. When there is a decrease in the heart rate, it is already the recovery of uterine contraction, and then it recovers. When there is a no contraction, only the recovery has come. So this onset, nadir and recovery is not correlating with the peak, with the onset, peak and recovery of the uterine contractions. So it is, the most important is late decelerations. I'm sorry, I said in early deceleration. So early decelerations are usually only because of the head compression. The late decelerations are due to uteroplacental insufficiency. Then there can be in maternal and fetal amenities. So then it's variable decelerations. So in variable deceleration, there is no pattern is found. It is usually abrupt decrease in the fetal heart rate, which we can see it. There is a decrease in fetal heart rate more than 15 beats per minute. It is lasting more than 15 seconds, and it is but it is less than 2 minutes duration. If it is crosses 2 minutes, that means there is a change in the baseline. So change of fetal heart rate, decrease in the fetal heart rate is more than 15 beats minute min. So if it is going for 120, 130, it is going to less than 100. And it is lasting for more than 15 seconds. When variable decelerations are associated with uterine contractions, their onset, depth, and duration, it varies with successive uterine contraction. In each uterine contraction, there is a different pattern is seen. So see, this is the onset, nadir, and recovery of uterine contraction of the fetal heart rate, but it has no relation with the contraction, and with each uterine contraction it differs. So this is the important. Variable deceleration are more omniquous because it is because of the compression of the umbilical cord, and if it is oligohydramnios there can be chances. So if it is a late deceleration or if it is a variable decelerations, we are more worried. It can be typical or typical when we not go into the more details of this. But what is severity? So if there are mild, so if the deceleration is less than 30 seconds duration, and it is not going less than 80, so heart rate is not reducing less than 80, and it is less than 30 seconds, so it is called as a mild. If the heart rate is going less than 80, moderate, and if the heart rate is going less than 70 for more than 60 seconds, in severe. So moderate and severe, more omniquous. Prolonged deceleration. So if there is a decrease in the fetal heart rate, which is 15 beats or more, which is lasting for more than 2 minutes, but it is less than 10 minutes. So it is called as a prolonged deceleration. So if it lasts more than 10 minutes or longer, it is a baseline change. So what are the prolonged deceleration? It is lasting for 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes, but more than 2 minutes. So prolonged deceleration causes are prolonged cord compression, hyperstimulation. Mainly it is in oxytocic drugs. There is a uterine hypertrophy. There is a tonic contractions of the uterus. There is a severe degree of abruption, eclamptic seizure, and following induction of anesthesia. So these are when there is a prolonged deceleration is there, which is lasting for more than 2 minutes. We should take an immediate action. Then sinusoidal pattern. This is we can see on the visually apparent smooth sine wave like undulating pattern of FHR baseline, where the frequency is 3 to 5 per minute and which persists for more than for 20 minutes or more. Same pattern continues for 20 minutes or more. So what it indicates, this sinusoidal pattern is mainly seen in cases of RH isoimmunization. So when there is a severe fetal anemia is there, either it can be because of the hemorrhage or isoimmunization or twin-to-twin transfusion, and whereas there is a severe hypoxia. So this tooth or sinusoidal pattern, we are not happy. Immediate action. See, there is the same pattern which is going for more than 20 minutes. This is a sinusoidal pattern. So this is a three-tiered fetal heart rate interpretation. So how do we interpret this results? CTG. So category 1, category 2, and category 3. So category 1 is normal. So there is the baby, it doesn't have a compromise. There is acid-base status is normal. So baseline heart rate within 110 to 160. There is a moderate baseline variability is there from 11 to 25 beats per minute. There are no late or variable decelerations. That is very important. There are no late or variable decelerations. There are early decelerations can be there or cannot be there, but acceleration can or cannot be there. Usually the accelerations will be there. So category 2 is indeterminate, not 1, not 2. This way, but the main important is category 3. It's a abnormal acid-base status, and there is immediate interventions are required when there is a category 3 interpretation. So what comes in category 3? There is a absent baseline variability. There is absolutely no variability is there. There is a recurrent late decelerations are there. There are variable decelerations are there. There is a bradycardia, the heart rate is going down, and there is a sinusoidal pattern. So all this come into a abnormal pattern. So these are the 3 principles of electronic fetal heart rate monitoring interpretation. So what happens, this is the environment of the uterus. What? Lungs, heart, vasculature, uterus, placenta, and cord, maternofetal environment. So what happens? So all clinically significant FHR decelerations, either it is a variable, late, or prolonged decelerations, it reflects there is somewhere there is an interruption in the pathway of the oxygen transfer, from the maternal lungs through placenta to supply from the fetal circulation and fetal cardiovascular system, from the environment of the mother to the environment of the fetus. At any one of time, there is a somewhere there is a problem, interruption is there. So what it happens? So moderate variability and or acceleration, it reliably predict that there is no absent or there is absent or there is no fetal metabolic acidemia the time. But if there is hypoxemia, hypoxia, metabolic acidosis, metabolic acid, the hypoxemia and acidemia are the changes into the blood. Hypoxia and acidosis in the changes into the this one fetus. It's not into the blood, in the tissues. So intrapartum interruption of fetal oxygenation does not result in neurological injury. So usually no cerebral palsy unless the fetal response progresses to the stage of metabolic acidemia. So when there is umbilical artery pH goes on less than 7, when there is a changes into the fetal blood had come, then there can be chances of cerebral palsy and brain injuries. So RCOG classified it is as a baseline, variable, deceleration and acceleration. So reassuring, what we are reassured with the pattern is when their heart rate is 110 to 160, there is more than 5 beats per minute, variability is there are no decelerations, accelerations are paired. This is a reassuring CTG. Non-reassuring. Non-reassuring is baseline 100 to 110, 109 or 160 to 180. The variability is less than 5 for more than 40 minutes, but it is less than 90 minutes. Decelerations, early decelerations are there, typical variable and single prolonged deceleration. We are non-reassuring fetal heart rate pattern. What is abnormal? Abnormal is less than 100 fetal heart rate, more than 110. Sinusoidal pattern is there, which is lasting more than 10 minutes. No variability, even if it is more, we have increased that time more than 90. There are decelerations, late decelerations, variable decelerations, and prolonged deceleration is there, that is abnormal CTG. So what are the tests we can do when there is a non-reassuring or when there is an abnormal category 2 or category 3 FHR findings is there, where we can go for further testing. We can go for fetal scalp stimulation, sampling. Then we can do the stimulation of the fetal scalp directly with the Ellis forceps and see vibroacoustic stimulation, and then digital scalp stimulation. All these things, and again record. So a Cochrane review of 3 trials concluded that manual fetal manipulation did not decrease the non-reassuring fetal scale, and it is not recommended. So we are not doing that. And it concluded that antenatal fetal glucose administration did not decrease the incidences of non-reassuring fetal status, and it is not recommended. So in grade 3, when it is abnormal, nothing, we should directly take the action. So what are the interventions we should take for when there is a non-reassuring fetal status is there? So first thing, change the position, stop the oxytocin, supplementation of oxygen, give oxygen, external oxygenation. Then discontinuation of any labor stimulating the oxytocin, I said. Change the maternal position, make it left lateral. Resolution of fetal hypotension if it is there, give IV fluids, hypotension. These are the immediate things we should do before taking the patient into for the cesarean section. Then do the pervaginal examination, find out if there is cord prolapse is there, compression is there, rapid cervical dilatation is there, where is the fetal heart rate is there. If the fully dilated is there, do ARM, do immediate delivery, apply this one when there is a fetal heart rate decelerations are there. See how much uterine contractions are there. If there is a tachysystole, hypertonic uterine contractions is there, more than 5 uterine contractions, there is less relaxation period in between 2 contractions, then go for tocolytics. If the fetal heart rate tracing includes recurrent variable decelerations, and usually it is mainly when there is a oligohydramnios there, you can go for amnioinfusions. So ABCD approach is do confirm fetal heart rate and see for the uterine activity. If the activity is, it is category 1, no problem. If it is 2 or 3, ABCD. Assess oxygen pathway and consider the causes. Begin corrective measures. E, FHS category. So presence of moderate variability or accelerations and absence of clinically significant deceleration is no problem. C is clear obstacle to rapid delivery. So we cannot do the rapid delivery by vaginally, go for cesarean section. And D is determine the decision to delivery time, whether the vaginal delivery is likely before the onset of metabolic acidemia and potential injury. If no, then go expedite delivery and go for cesarean section. If the patient is of low risk, we can go for routine surveillance every 30 minutes in first stage, every 15 minutes second stage. Heightened surveillance, little bit problem is there, patient is high risk case and vaginal delivery is likely, then we can go for monitoring judiciously every 15 minutes in first stage and every 5 minutes in second stage. We can cut short the second stage of labor by applying either vacuum or forceps. So management, if there is a suspicious CTG is there, if the quality is not proper, check the contact of the whether the toco and the probe of fetal heart rate monitoring is kept properly or not, where we can see the connection, change it if there is no quality. If there is a hypercontractility, stop oxytocin, consider tocolytics. If there is maternal tachycardia is there, pyrexia is there, dehydration is there, hypertension is there, correct it. If there are any change of position, if there is any sedation is given, drugs are given, we have to record all these things, give crystalloid bros, give IV fluid rapidly, and again see whether there is a change in the sun. But what is the pathological CTG? Pathological CTG is, in this we have to go for, if the possible, fetal blood sampling, but we are not doing, and if not feasible, go for immediate delivery. So what are the effects of medication? There are so many medications which are being given during or before labor, which can cause the fetal heart rate changes. So if we give the narcotics to the mother, there is a decreased variability and accelerations are decreased. Corticosteroids are being given, there is a decreased variability. With betamethasone, usually it has been found that there is less variability. So, and it is usually when it is a premature case where we give for lung maturity, betamethasone is given and the patient lands into the labor. So this also so on the partogram, why the partogram is a very important is for that. We monitor, we write the drugs also which are being given. Then magnesium sulfate, when the case of imminent eclampsia or eclampsia, when we give maximum dose, there is significant decrease in the short-term variability and insignificant decrease in fetal heart rate. So there is inhibit the increase in acceleration with advancing age. If the patient is under epidural analgesia for finless labor, there is a decreased variability and accelerations also decrease. Terbutaline, there is a fetal heart rate because terbutaline causes maternal tachycardia. It will in fact cause fetal tachycardia. So then next is the fetal scalp pH. When it is a high risk, high density, high dependency units, high NICUs are available, high risk units is there. This all other invasive tests are possible. The fetal scalp blood pH in women where there is a abnormal fetal heart rate tracing, the at least can go for fetal heart rate, and this is all for the medical legal purposes. We have to keep the CTG recordings for at least 25 years. They have been seen that when, if it is abnormal, we have to keep the CTG recording for 25 years. So if we want to have one, that why we have not gone for immediate delivery, why we had waited for normal delivery. So for that, if the scalp blood, if there is no acidemia, if acidosis we want to, we have to go for scalp blood pH. So cervix need to be at least 4 to 5 centimeter dilated. Cervix should be at -1 to 0 station. If it is less than, pH is less than 7.2, means it is definitely fetal acidosis. Immediate delivery has to be there. If the pH of scalp blood is 7.2 to 7.25, it is borderline. We can repeat it or deliver if there is a fall. But if pH is more than 7.25, then it is reassuring. So if we can wait for the normal delivery. If it is repeat, same thing has come. If abnormality persists, you have to go for immediate delivery. So there is a great negative predictive value to the scalp blood pH. So if it is 97 to 99% is, if the scalp blood pH is normal, it will rule out the acidosis, acidemia. So what are the contraindications for this? There is maternal infection, if it is any means STDs, HIV, hepatitis, because we are doing the internal things. We do, and if it is chorioamnionitis, maternal fever, in this case we don't go for any invasive testing. Fetal scab bleeding disorders are there because if we are taking the blood from the fetal scab, if any bleeding disorders are there, there can be chances of fetal formation of fetal hematoma, kephalhematoma. If premature fetus, there are also it is the face presentation where because we can't put things. So this is how the instrument is used and the fetal skull blood pH is taken. Then the next is fetal pulse oximetry. Here, though, when the oxygen saturation is less than 30% for more than 2 minutes, it is acidosis. If the O2 saturation fall less than 30% for more than 2 minutes, not 30 minutes, for more than 2 minutes, it is approved by FDA for use in when there is a non-reassuring fetal states. The SCOG currently recommends against its use until the further studies are available confirming its efficacy and safety. So there is insufficient evidence to use its adjunct or independent of electronic fetal surveillance. So electronic fetal surveillance is the method for intrapartum fetal monitoring. The other one is fetal scalp lactate testing. So these are all the advanced methods are there, and usually this maybe in our country we are not very regularly, and each and every states we are doing this in a hospital, but in Western countries they are following all these things. Because here in our we go for more liberal cesarean sections. Fetal scalp blood lactate testing. So it is high sensitivity and specificity than scalp pH. So if it is more than 4.8 millimole per liter, then it definitely there is a acidosis. So clinical trials compared to use of scalp pH to scalp lactate level did not demonstrate any difference between the acidemia at birth, Epworth score, or neonatal intensive care admissions. So it's usually not recommended. So both scalp blood pH and scalp lactate in trials, they have shown same efficacy. So not routinely used. I already told regarding the STAN. So this is a newer method. So ST waveform analysis, monitor USFDA with scalp electrode. It's a newer method that involves a combination of fetal heart rate interpretation with CTG and analysis of fetal echocardiography, and mainly it is the fetal cardiac signals, P wave, QRS complex, T wave is amplified, and in cardio for fetal heart rate calculation, and ST segment changes have been seen. It aims to reduce the incidence of fetal acidemia and hypoxemia by identifying these earlier and with greater sensitivity than CTG alone. So when we add the fetal echocardiography, there is more, it becomes more sensitive, and earliest we can diagnose hypoxemia and acidosis. So what is the advantage of using this STAN? So ST wave analysis. So it is less invasive because fetal echocardiography, it is easier applicable during early labor, and there is a display of continuous info. We can visually see. So there is a display. So no need for going for invasive fetal blood scalp pH or lactate levels. And it's a reduction in moderately. If we are using this, we can reduce the chances of operative delivery, cesarean section, fetal echocardiography, change of ST patterns. That's thing. So ST rise, a fetus responding to hypoxia. If there is a T wave and there is a and this one. So that means negative ST, a fetus who is unable to respond and has not had the time to react. So changes have been seen. So restrict a fetal ST waveform analysis to those with non-reassuring fetal status on electronic fetal monitoring. There only we can go for this. The use of ST waveform analysis for the intrapartum assessment of compromised fetus is not recommended for routine use at this time. Thank you. This is all regarding intrapartum fetal monitoring. So if we have fetus, we have finished the fetal surveillance. Finish. So this is, if you can find, you can go for through the CTG reports, and you have to read it